a lot of what I did was just sort of sit with people and slowly get a sense of who actually really wanted to do this. And not really don't ever press on the detail, let them take the story where they want it to go, not press them on anything. And some people you would realize, okay, this person really wants to do this and really wants to talk about this. And other people you realize very quickly, no, they don't. And if they don't, you just let them finish wherever they want to finish. And that's fine. You thank them very much. And then you use that bit of that interview to sort of inform the larger project in a broad sense, but you don't go back and say, well, no, but tell me, like, were you or were you not in the party? And like, what happened?
I heard you tell a story about how the CIA sort of started a little bit like frat boys.
Oh yeah.
And now, so I would love you to like tell that story about some of the examples of that, but also how the CIA is now evolved into this like woke CIA
right.
that we're seeing now.
Well, that line is actually more direct than it might appear at first glance. So the CIA was founded just after World War II by the United States. The United States came out of that war being by far the most powerful country in the world and in human history, but they didn't really have the overseas covert operators that the British and Russians had during their era of empire. They were new to what I would call imperialism. So they founded the CIA. And these men almost exclusively came from the ranks of what we would call the blue bloods in the United States, like the closest thing we have to an aristocracy in the US. They all went to boarding schools. They all were part of these like private, like super secret organizations like Skull and Bones. They all went to Yale. They all knew each other. They grew up with each other. They were all in fraternities together. They were usually Protestant, like hyper elite. And contrary to what some people might think about the CIA, they were by the standards of their time, liberal and cosmopolitan. They were not like the knuckle dragging conservatives of the South. They believed themselves to be very sophisticated and open-minded, and they really believed in sort of, they came from the Ivy League. They thought that they were really sort of intellectually mature and global. And yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they were, on the one hand, they were absolutely frat boys. And you can see this in the way that they acted in the 50s and 60s. They got really drunk all the time. They kind of treated, they would have these crazy parties when they would like literally fall down and do insane things. But they also kind of treated the world as if it was like a rowing competition at school, right? They were really like believed in meritocracy. They believed that they were going to do a good job. We're going to get them, right? This deeply American, especially American elite idea that like, I'm going to go out there and show them that I'm good. And they did this with a lot of money, with absolutely no consequences, and often lubricated with a bunch of alcohol. I mean, and just
British actually.
Well, no, but a lot of them went to the kinds of American high schools that were trying to be the Eton College of the United States. So like they all went to boarding schools that were based on the boarding schools of England, right? Like they all like really looked up to Eton and Etonians and MI6, and very disturbingly, they thought James Bond was really cool as like, as like a piece of fiction. And like, they really like, and they had a weird inferiority complex towards MI6. They saw MI6 as like the even more like elegant and sophisticated defenders of Western civilization on the front lines of empire or whatever, right? And so they often had, there was often this weird interplay where the US had all the money. The US had all the money, but the MI6 really know what they were doing. So the MI6 really pushed the CIA into backing the coup in Iran in 1953 because the MI6 couldn't get it done on their own. It was really initially about Iranian control of oil that was supposed to be, in the minds of MI6, controlled by Britain. And they turned to the Americans, knowing what Americans cared about, and like, well, did you also know that these Iranians might become communists? And have you thought about that? Has anybody told you that? And that got like the red-blooded Americans all excited about this coup that they were going to back. So yeah, from the beginning, it was young men that were deeply American and deeply Protestant, but thought of themselves as worldly and sophisticated. Now, this kind of all makes sense when you see these recent videos about like, the CIA is an intersectional gay friend, gay, welcoming, multiracial entity, is that they still get their people from the best universities in the United States. So whatever the ideology is on college campuses, that's kind of going to be their ideology too. It's going to merge with this very concrete material need to further the interests of the United States wherever they are. But they're going to get the same types of people that you would meet at a party if you were on the campus of Yale or Harvard or Berkeley or whatever. I mean, I went to Berkeley for undergraduate, one of the more like, liberal or left even schools in the US, and the CIA was definitely recruiting on our campus. And yeah, I mean, the CIA, that's where they come from. It's the self-conscious elites of the US ruling class that, they don't like to think of themselves as like Hicks in the South. They like to think of themselves as, dancing the waltz in some Vienna ballroom and trading secrets with the Soviets, even though really at the beginning they had no idea what they were doing. They were basically just powered by huge amounts of money and the fact that they would never get in trouble because they had the US government behind them.
That's a great aesthetic.
Yeah.
And can you just relate that story about the sex tape that they made?
Yes, I want to know about the sex tape.
Yeah, so this is, again, like as I mentioned, like they didn't understand the world at all, but they had unlimited resources and they could never get in trouble, right? So after 1955, when the United States started funneling money to the right wing conservative Muslim party in Indonesia, and that failed, they started looking for other ways to bring down Sukarno, Indonesia's first president and leader of the Third World Movement. They discussed assassinating him. That's a classic thing you can do. They even went as far, according to declassified files, as selecting the person that would carry out the assassination. But they also went to their friends in Hollywood to try to assassinate his character. If you know like classic Christmas songs in America, the singer named Bing Crosby. Well, Bing Crosby had a production company in Los Angeles. The CIA went to him via a fixer that worked for Howard Hunt and said, we need to produce a sex tape that's going to portray Sukarno sleeping with a white Russian blonde woman that we're going to say is from the KGB. And Bing Crosby said, of course, because back then the CIA was seen as like this patriotic force. So they hired a Mexican American from the LA like underworld acting scene, because they figured like, well, that's close enough, right? Like Mexicans look kind of like Asians.
I know,
brown person. They put him in a bald cap because they wanted to, in addition to portraying Sukarno as promiscuous and controlled by the KGB, they wanted to show the world that he's bald. They thought that would destroy Indonesians' respect for him. And this is very reminiscent of what happened with Fidel in the early 60s. One of the CIA plots was to make his beard fall out, and they thought in this very, very racist and Orientalist way, oh, well, down in Latin America, they really respect machismo so much so that if his beard falls out, they won't respect him anymore because he won't be a man.
That's where his soul is.
Yeah, exactly. So they made the tape. Bing Crosby and his brother Larry put this together, but it wasn't released apparently because it just wasn't convincing enough. But I mean, again, if they had it been so deeply American, and Puritan and Protestant, they would have known that everyone in Indonesia already knew that Sukarno was promiscuous and had all kinds of affairs with women. This wouldn't have shocked people the way that it would have if, for example, a sex tape of John F. Kennedy or Eisenhower came out. They had, again, to underline the same point, they had unlimited resources. They could never get in trouble if they failed. And they didn't really think about the actual place as a real place. They thought it as part of their sort of stupid, like, boys club competition to see who could do a better job at fighting communism, right? So the story is very funny, but it also isn't, right? I mean, it's a farce. It could, someone should make a movie about it, but at the same time, they're trying to destroy the reputation of the founding father of a country they don't understand at all, for reasons that they don't even understand. And they have the privilege, the position in world history to be able to try to carry something like this out.
That's sickening. I will also, you've just ruined Christmas for me as well.
those are good albums, the Bing Crosby Christmas songs. Yeah.
Oh God.
So Febriana, do you have any sense of the reception of this book in Indonesia? I mean, you were saying it was hard for you to read it, but do you feel do you have any idea of like how other Indonesians may have received this book? Although we kind of discussed that maybe Vincent won't be allowed in Indonesia anymore.
I don't know. I think Indonesian doesn't really read bahasa Indonesia, so I don't ask everyone, but there's like so funny thing, like this book become like everyone who read this book looks like very smart, right? So I'm in Jakarta Method right now. So I have a funny story. So this is just my impression because I have read Jakarta Method. I have read Jakarta Method. And I was just like, so everyone in social media, whatever. But I didn't read that because I think like if I read about 1965, I have to be ready with myself like, emotionally. So I have this funny story. There is like a very rich guy, like friend of my friend, in front of me reading Vincent book. And then he didn't even look at me, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I want to say, "Oh, maybe you read that book." There was my name there. The audience of the book is very, very like rich kids. That I think it's cool. Like very middle class. I think like middle class, upper class, even like very upper class. So I don't know whether they really read that book, but I think like
just carrying around.
Yeah, it's carrying around like most, but I think Indonesian is more like watching film and documentary rather than read a book. But I think the audience is more sophisticated, like academicians, like a student in university who like exposed to the English book, like for example, and some of them rich kids, of course, because they want to look smart.
Yeah, because Febriana is like in like one of the first pages. I think her is one of the people that made it possible. But I think again, once more, I think I went to her for help. I think I did, right, Febriana, when we were discussing the possibility of an Indonesian translation, because it is happening now. But at first I wanted to ask her for her opinion, because at first it seemed like the translation rights were being bought by Gramedia, which is like a very large corporate entity in Indonesia. And the fear, based on something that had happened to another author based in London, Suchen Marching, was that maybe Gramedia was going to buy it in order to not publish it, or that maybe Gramedia was going to buy it and then really censor it so that it wouldn't come out at all. So now it is being translated by a smaller left-leaning press, and they're very brave, and like they're very good at what they're doing. So we'll see how that goes, how the reaction is when it actually comes out in Bahasa. Because as she points out, like, there's only a small group of people that read English. And
right. I'm hoping, because we need to rewrite the history of 1965. If they publish this book, I think it will be really helpful for us to introduce this to the high school student. Because with my experience with the Remember 1965, my organization, we have so many audience, like the third generation, they are in high school and university. So we need like a book, I think, that can give like alternative history aside from the school book, history school book that actually like produced by under the Suharto regime, still the same history book until today.
And I'm curious about Remember 1965. So do you focus more on kind of making an unknown history better understood, or is it like in your film where you talk about how capitalism or capital is killing the rainforest right now?
Actually, Remember 1965, we focus on the third generation, so the grandchildren, and we ask them to share the story of their experience of the family during the 1965. So the first essay is actually published. It's my article, my essay, but then we have to dropped the article because the Islamic Defender Front hounded me at that time. So we need to erase all my track in internet online, including that. So we published some story from the third generation about their family experience. So that's why I convinced myself that every Indonesian is actually part of story. I don't have to feel conflicted if I report about 1965 anymore. I don't have to be afraid because I know like exactly like my grandfather. Yeah. But yeah, I think everyone has the story with their family members. So I convince myself until to this day that you don't have to be afraid. Just talk about it.
Right. What do you think the odds are, Vincent, of this book being taught in American schools?
Oh, I mean, well, 100. Well, on 100%. If we consider like one or two schools to be enough, I've already gotten some like college professors and high school teachers have. I like it has at least been assigned in one or two high school and college courses so far, which is really great. I mean, again, like when I started writing this, like it wasn't supposed to be a big book. Like my publisher didn't expect it to really sell. So I was I'm really overcome and sort of grateful that it's somehow making a little bit of an impact. But I mean, to be actually like assigned as part of the curriculum, I think that's impossible, right? I think that would undermine the literal point of public schooling. You need to form citizens that can engage productively in society, and I think that telling too much of that story contradicts that role for public education. But it's here and there already. It's already I spoke to one high school class. It was an elite. It was like one of these like New York sort of like liberal.
The future CIA you spoke to.
Yeah, maybe they were like training reading it to learn how to do better. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh.
No, but yeah, so it's made a little impact, and I'm really like a couple of courses in high school and university have assigned it, but I think long term you have to look at the structural contradictions between the formation of a citizenry which really believes in the American myth and really believes in sort of the American civic religion and telling too many of the stories about our past. I think we can kind of selectively tell them, especially when it's really far along in the past. Okay, we can now start to talk about slavery 200 years later. But I think there's real structural contradictions, unfortunately.
I mean, that does make me think of like the whole idea of declassified documents from the CIA.
Right.
What is the time? I think in the UK it's like 30 years or something. But what is the time frame for the CIA in the US?
So in the CIA, it's whenever they feel like, never if they want, never.
But I thought it was a freedom of information.
So that's the thing. So State Department basically dumps everything according to the time frame.
Okay.
CIA does not. So I was able to draw upon declassified State Department files for the period, and that's what a lot of the core of the argument of the book rests, is really showing the way that the U.S. government was talking about the massacres as they happened.
Right.
The CIA documentation from the early 60s we do not have. Now, okay. I called them up and I asked them, but they did not tell me. Right? I tried, and predictably they didn't tell me. But no, so CIA we still don't have. But yeah, there is a kind of a dynamic in which in the West we allow enough truth to be told that everyone can feel free without the average person really getting a sense of the full nature of U.S. empire. And so yeah, I mean, on the one hand, it's really amazing. Bradley Simpson, the historian, did really the heroic work of going through all of the declassified files in Washington and getting, building the story out of that. And on the other hand, that's really amazing. On the other hand, again, there are structural factors where if something is really, really explosive, they have ways to keep it under wraps if they need to.
Or, well, I mean, like the Afghanistan papers,
right,
that were released and then didn't really make any sort of impact.
Right.
So I guess that's one way of just making it disappear and appear to be transparent. Or,
well, I don't know. It's hard to say to what extent these structures are intentionally created or if they just kind of evolve over time. But I think you do have a system in the US of the reproduction of sort of consent among most of the population that exists alongside this small group of people that has always, you know, since the middle of the 20th century, we've been reading sort of more dissident or anti-imperialist or anti-CIA literature. And it's small enough that it's not a big deal. And you can kind of have both. And whether or not that was on purpose, it does work out, I think, fairly well that, you know, on the one hand, you can let people like me and, you know, a few thousand people that buy a book like this have their fun, like learning all the secrets, but, you know, the vast majority of people are still going to just uncritically, well, not uncritically, but they don't have the time really to unlearn and relearn the nature of U.S. foreign policy over the last century. They kind of, you know, they get the official version.
Sound bites, right?
That was going to be kind of my question as well. Like you see, we have kind of movements around identity politics, Black Lives Matter, and increased rights for LGBT people. And then also you have kind of slightly, you know, radical left movements like Jeremy Corbyn became quite popular. You have Novara Media going up, Bernie Sanders, you got the Bernie Bros. Do you think that there is a cultural movement towards kind of a wider acceptance of alternative narratives, or do you think that it's just not going to go that far? Like, what do you think about the time that your book is being released, which is now, and how that's going to be received culturally?
Yeah, I think you can point to material shifts that undergird the processes that you're describing. One is that the West is less powerful than it used to be. So the US and the UK are in relative decline. The US is still by far the most powerful country in the world, militarily, economically, by far, but still it's in relative decline. So you get more of a reflection on history when you are face to face with the limits of your own power. And number two, there's the internet, right? So for better or worse, I think for better and worse, you get the proliferation of discourses and the proliferation of narratives as a result of the internet. This also leads to all kinds of insanity and people believing completely ridiculous things, but it sort of shakes up the landscape, which used to be dominated largely by one or, you know, 3 or 4 corporate owned outlets. So yeah, there's absolutely space for these kinds of struggles on the local level and even on the macro level to reclaim narratives, or as Febriana puts, like, you know, rewrite the history of her country. And that will be all about, you know, Indonesians fighting within this new space, battles over, you know, this and that aspect of legacy. So yeah, I think those two things open up kind of a field for contestation, and it's up to the people to fight on it.
Well, that does bring me to Febriana saying that, you know, you were talking about younger generation are more engaged in rewriting history. How do you see that? Is there a movement, do you think, that's like coming up that will be anti-imperialist and maybe?
Yeah, I think especially when Indonesia right now have a very serious issue with the colonization in West Papua. So it's easier for me to introduce the 1965 issue because it is happening right now in West Papua. So the history of West Papua cannot separate from what happens during 1965. And remember that the first overseas company that get the contract in Indonesia to exploit the nature is Freeport, which is like the largest gold mining company based in US. So CIA, like Sukarno, and then replace it with Suharto, and Suharto signs the first contract with the overseas companies with the Freeport in West Papua. So it's you can find like the connection of all these events. So it's easy right now for Indonesians, especially the young generations, especially right now, like West Papua become a headline. So what we introduce as a reporter or journalist, that we look back at the history back in 1965, and it actually the I mean, like so the momentum is keep going on since the International People Tribunal, and then there is like a huge protest in Indonesia during 2019, the anti-racism protest, thanks to Black Lives Matters. So it is still going on until today, and I think like I'm very optimistic with the third generations. So I keep like writing the story about West Papua and 1965 as well. So hoping that more book that will help these young generations to I think like to understand what happens back then with their family during 1965. Yeah.
Was there a specific
hopefully,
event?
Hopefully that the book, like Vincent book, will be out like, I don't know, this year or next year. I'm not sure.
They were trying to get it done by September 30th this year, but I don't know. You know,
I'm curious with the response from the Indonesian military. I think like usually they will ban the book first, or like they will buy all the book.
Well, that'd be good.
Well, let's hope it's the latter, you know.
Yeah.
So I work with Tempo. I work with Tempo before I become a freelance journalist. So every time Tempo publish a headline, the military the military mostly like both all the Tempo magazine edition. So first they will like ban your book. Secondly, they will like buy all your book. So the more that your book banned, like everyone will like copy it.
Oh, well, it's
like,
already
there will be black market for it in Bahasa Indonesia.
Well, this already
doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work. People is going to find like it's getting popular. So there is like both ways. The book will be like popular because first it's banned, or like the military will buy it and it's disappear from the market. Everyone curious. Okay, we are going to copy this book because the book disappear.
There's no effect.
It's
I mean, print more. You know, print as much as you can. See how much they can buy.
A bunch of people Indonesians on social media have already messaged me because like they bought the book on Tokopedia, which is like Indonesia's kind of like, you know, I don't know, a local website, like marketplace, and the version of the book they got is just somebody that printed it out and glued it together, you know.
My God, Sean,
that's what my brother
yeah
that's how my brother read your book, actually.
So once the translation exists into Bahasa, like anyone that wants to find it, they will, you know, if they're trading PDFs or printing out their own edition. So that's they're just working on the translation, which is the main thing.
So what do you think? I mean, I guess I don't understand enough about the book industry that your publisher was thinking it wasn't going to be a big deal. And
well, yeah, it wouldn't be normally, right? I mean, it's a number one, serious nonfiction is, as a rule, doesn't sell. Generally, serious nonfiction is kind of, they do it for prestige, it makes them look good, but then they make all of their money from Twilight and Harry Potter and like self-help books and, you know, maybe like Gian Tolentino type, like sort of, you know, reflections on things that everyone can relate to. That's what really sells. Serious nonfiction usually doesn't sell, even if it's about something that everyone knows about, like the Vietnam War or the World War II. Now, serious nonfiction about Indonesia, which is a country that most people
don't know.
Most people in the US have never even heard of. It's just, you know, they thought it would be good. They thought it would be like a medium-sized whatever, but it sold out right away. The first printing, I mean, they had to reprint it 9 times.
Wow.
Because the initial printing was like less than 10% of what was needed. It sold out for 2 months. And so, yeah, it was just kind of, I don't know. Maybe it was lucky. I mean, I think it was, it just hit at the right moment where everyone is in lockdown, and I was just, a lot of people needed somebody on their podcast or their YouTube show. So I just spent like all summer doing that. And I think it just got lucky that it hit. And also it's, you know, it's something that once people kind of like, wait, what is that? Is something they realized that they didn't know a lot about and that people should know more about. But it was just, I think, it it was supposed to be medium small, and by luck it got medium big. But
no, it's explosive. Like I want everybody in the Asian community to Asian diaspora to
the diaspora,
to read this. Yeah,
the Asian community, that'd be 4 billion.
Sure,
4 billion people.
Well,
that'd be
I
really
want that
good.
for you. You know, yeah. Or maybe just the CIA bought every copy and like told you that. Yeah.
So the funny thing is that some of the Indonesian exile already read that book, and the first capture of that they sent me is just my name. I said, like, what is your opinion about the book? Why you send that capture of? I think like it's just like, I think like it's a little disaster because like everyone, Febri, I saw your name, but yeah, I
and
know
then they just
that.
There.
Yes, and
yeah, they didn't stop to sending that. I was like, why Vincent put that my name? So everyone just like send that Febri, and even like Tan Wahyu, Febri, is that you? Your name in that book? I was like, who do you think Febriana Firdaus? I think it's only one. So it's so funny. And I asked them, what is your opinion about the book? Yeah, some of them like it's very emotional, it's very hard. Yeah, same with me. Like, yeah, that's like the first impression because it's about our life. Someone wrote our life, and it's difficult.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, I wanted to put that at the very beginning because usually you put your people that you think at the end, but I wanted to put on the first page because I wanted to really be like, okay, now these people really were there first, and I'm really building on what they did. And another person in that paragraph was Josh Oppenheimer. But I told myself, so I watched The Act of Killing like many years ago, and then I told myself that I would rewatch it when I was writing the book, and I couldn't watch it. Like I like sat down to watch it part 2, and after having met everybody and really knowing the story, I was like, no, I can't ever watch that again. So I can't imagine what it would be like, to pick up, I'd be asked to read this book. I mean, you don't expect anyone to read it. Certainly anybody that it's going to be difficult for, but like Francisca, the kind of one of the main characters in the book, I think probably the hero. I mean, it depends on who you ask, but she read it and she said, of course, that she was very glad it came out. She lives in Amsterdam. She's probably the main character, but she said it was her daughter told me that it was an emotional thing. And like, I can't even imagine if it was.
I think like for the third generation, because we feel guilty because we couldn't do anything because we weren't born yet. Even like me, I have never met my grandfather, and then if only I could do something, but I wasn't born yet. So that every time, so when I read the book, I feel so angry, I feel so upset, and I feel like I didn't know what to do. And for like, I think the Indonesian exile feel like so relief because even like one of them, they had a dream. In their dream that they meet their parents and they explain that to their parents that they are not criminals because Indonesian government labeled them as a criminal. Indonesian, like in like the most of the half of the Indonesian label these people like as communist follower and criminal. They even have that dream. So I think like some of Indonesian exile read this book, they feel relief because finally someone like recognize me. Oh, this is international book that I'm not a criminal. That's the only thing they want. Like they are not a criminal. So yeah, some they have like can read that book, very exciting. But some like me, I'm like the third generation. Most of us cannot like read the whole book in like a week. I think like every time I imagine, oh my God, this is like so tragic. So yeah, for us like the grandchildren, it's very hard.
There's so many. I think that there's so many untold stories. Like I was telling my dad that that I was interviewing you guys today, and he told me about his uncle who was writing, like sort of editing for a left-leaning newspaper in Sarawak, and then was arrested without trial and put in, like, just disappeared for like 8 years, and then he ended up, when he got out, he like tried to reintegrate, couldn't, jumped off a hospital building, and then that's like a kind of a family secret. But that's Malaysia, that's the British. But I mean, it just sounds.
What year was that? What year did he get arrested? If you don't mind me asking.
Not sure. I can look it up. Yeah.
I wonder if that was
that's
the same
what
story
happened.
my dad told me.
Yeah, that's what happened. Like everyone disappeared, right? With no explanation, and we are waiting.
The thing is, people disappear, and I mean, my dad told me a similar story, and none of the children, it's just not talked about. The children don't know where they are. Like, where's my father? Where's my grandfather? Just gone. And then even, I think, when they come out of prison, no explanation again, and they're just sort of like brought back to society that's completely forgotten their sacrifice. There's no acknowledgement of the sacrifice they've made.
Yeah, because it's like let's say in the UK, you know, everyone's always proudly talking about their grandfather's sacrifice and the heroism and this and that, because the regime that sent them out is still in power. But and their history is represented and celebrated. But I guess if the regime's changed, then they become the enemy, and it just becomes a really shameful secret. So yeah.
And continuing, I mean, even I think with your documentary for Febriana, Our Mother's Land, you interviewed all these people that had protested and had like terrible things happen to them as a result of the protest, and then it didn't really work to say, you know, the corporations still have their hold on the land.
So talking about that loss, that feeling of loss, I remember when the first time I found out, when my mother said that your grandfather, he didn't pass away. And it was just like, what? What didn't pass away? What do you mean? And then she told me that he disappeared. And
How old were you?
I was just earlier in my university, so it was like my life like completely changed, and I still have this like so many questions about that. So till she didn't tell me right away this is the story, but like another day she told me, another day she told me another story. So it's a really long process. So that's why when I knew that I want to be a journalist and I want to rewrite the history. so that's why when I wrote about 1965, I was very emotional, because I don't know, I was crying when I was writing the story. The article was like, and then including reading that book. But the feeling of loss, I don't know, it's not going anywhere. Even I know the story already, like I still feel like the same the first time I heard that he didn't pass away, and then it's not disappear from me until to this day. So I don't know how like everyone cope with this. I think every grandchildren has like this, why this has happened? Why this has happened? So it's still a question.
Do you think that feeling is about the injustice of it and the fact that it's not
injustice, grief? I don't know, like
powerlessness.
Yeah, I feel like why this happened? Like the grief, like if you know that where is the burial, like the funeral, right? And then okay, you can take a rest, but you don't know what's happened to him and where is the funeral. What happened? I don't know. I want to know.
So you mean that that when your mom said he disappeared, the idea is like really you don't even know if he has died or anything.
The last time that the military arrest him, that's it.
Wow.
So he could still be in prison.
So, I don't know what happened. Like everyone in that prison already killed. So, but no one told like what's happened exactly. So I think like the third generation after found out about their father or mother, they have like the question that lingering. Like me, until today, I feel curious. Until to this day, I feel like, okay, but what's happened? It's like I have the same dream almost every night. I took a train to my home in my village, but I never reached that home. That's like a crazy dream until to this day. And my mother have a dream chasing by the civilians, like and military, almost every night. Wow. The same dream. I also have the dream because I don't feel like that I want to come to home and find out what's happened. So that dream haunted me every night, actually, almost every night. I always have a dream. I took the train, I'm going to finish this feeling of curiosity and grief. And I cannot stop the train to my home in my village where my grandfather came from, like cannot stop. And it's haunted me until today. So I cannot imagine what happened with the other grandchildren. I don't know.
Yeah. So this is just a little taste of what Vincent went through listening on our side, listening to incredible stories. And then I don't know how you facilitate that, Vincent, yourself, but I'm just like somewhat dumbstruck by this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of wrong ways to interview people about this kind of trauma. And there's a very small number of right ways. And so the main thing to do would to learn how to avoid all of the wrong ways to talk to these people. So as I said in Solo, I spent a lot of time just kind of living in like down the road from a group of survivors that meet all the time. And a lot of what I did was just sort of sit with people and slowly get a sense of who actually really wanted to do this. And not really don't ever press on the detail, let them take the story where they want it to go, not press them on anything. And some people you would realize, okay, this person really wants to do this and really wants to talk about this. And other people you realize very quickly, no, they don't. And if they don't, you just let them finish wherever they want to finish. And that's fine. You thank them very much. And then you use that bit of that interview to sort of inform the larger project in a broad sense, but you don't go back and say, well, no, but tell me, like, were you or were you not in the party? And like, what happened? Just because a lot of people, and this, find some people, they slowly over time, a lot of people would tell me at the beginning, oh no, I wasn't involved in politics before 1965, which is like, okay, I know that's not true, but I'm going to let them decide over time if they trust me enough to actually tell me. And then some people be like, actually, no, I was in the youth wing, or I was a full member. I was a kader, as they say, which means we're really like brought into the party and took an oath and things. And there were some of the people that ended up being really like the main characters, the people that really, really wanted to do this. So like Francisca, this amazing woman now in her mid-90s, she has like a really sharp memory about everything that happened in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s. And so she was amazing to be able to talk to forever. And then Sakono, who is in Solo, who ended up being another main character. He's somebody that like is still really like fierce about his left-wing convictions that he got in the early 60s. And like I just got like photos from him. Like his daughter just got married a couple weeks ago. He's doing really well. He really loves to like hammer home the story that he wants to tell. But many, many, many other people, you realize very, very slowly, or you realize very quickly, oh no, they didn't really want to do this. And it was just all about patience to let other people decide if they want to be involved or not.
Yeah, it's hard. Like it's hard because it's a line between the political and the personal that's like, but deeply tragic as well. So it's a really hard place to negotiate from. Okay, I don't know if I have any more questions. I think we've talked for 2 hours and 20 minutes, which is amazing. Do you have anything to? I mean, I'm sure we could talk forever, but that would be terribly imposing. So, do you have any thing you would like to?
My cat is coming.
Yeah.
He wants to be in. Okay, here.
The cat is now calling times. The cat needs Febriana back.
Yeah.
No, I think this has been really great. All I would say is thank you to the both of you and to Febriana and to everybody that, you know, for whatever reason ended up showing interest in this. It's weird that it was me that wrote it, as we said at the very beginning, but I'm very glad this is somehow existing. And I'm just really grateful to Febriana and to both of you for Febriana's help and her placing a little bit of trust in me a couple of years ago, and for both of your interest in all of this.
I mean, it's a really great book, and it's a very American book, actually. Even though I said that in the beginning, it is such an American story that needs to be told. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to Tanwa Pio
oh my gosh! Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Because I said, Vincent, this is like Tanwa Pio contact me. Like I cannot say. Like okay, no? I cannot.
Well,
I never like accept any like invitation talking about.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
The Ignoramus's Guide to Surviving Humanity is available as a podcast on Spotify and Amazon Music.
You can also like and subscribe to our videos on YouTube. And if you want to help us grow, then you can become a patron on Patreon. And that's it, right? I think that's it.
Yeah.